served with some real scumbags, like Matt Gaetz. He paid minors to have sex with him at drug parties. Bob Good endorsed my opponent, a known neo-Nazi. These people used to walk around with white hoods at night. Now they're walking around with white hoods in the daytime.
Republican Representative Tony Gonzalez of Texas is not pulling any punches. You heard him. I mean, repeating the allegations against Matt Gaetz. Oof. So now this, let me give you some context in this, okay? So House Freedom Caucus has been fighting against other Republicans over the issue of funding Ukraine. That is a fight that they just lost. So not only were they against funding Ukraine, of course, they were funding against the funding of the government at large. That was one of the issues that actually got Kevin McCarthy removed. And now that same far-right faction is threatening Speaker Mike Johnson, who had just pushed through a series of foreign aid bills as part of a $95 billion package to support Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. So the issue, of course, is not wanting to fund Ukraine specifically. Johnson, as well as more establishment Republicans, do want to fund Ukraine, but here's what's different, right? So Johnson had once voted against funding Ukraine until he got the speakership, until he got some intelligence briefings, and now he's in favor of funding Ukraine, and because evangelicals are in favor of funding Ukraine. Interesting. So look, normally evangelicals go along with the far right. But look, on this issue, they're clearly against the Russians, and there's a reason for it, right? There has been a crackdown in the Russian-held parts of Ukraine on Christians, on evangelical Christians, basically anybody who's not part of the Russian Orthodox Church. In fact, according to the U.S. Department of State 2022 report on international religious freedom, the Russian government instituted widespread regional bans on minority religious groups such as evangelical Christians, Roman and Greek Catholics, as well as Protestants. And according to a Ukrainian Institute for Religious Freedom report, dozens of Ukrainian priests and pastors have been arrested, arbitrarily detained, tortured, and deported. Ukrainian Protestants, who make up only 4% of the Ukrainian population, have been disproportionately targeted for their faith. So now look, Russia can point it to, oh yeah, well the Ukrainian Orthodox Church has been kind of saying mean things about the Russians. Yeah, but there hasn't been no violation of their religious freedom, whereas in the Russian-held Ukrainian territory, there has been. In fact, since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, the Russian military has killed at least 39 priests, pastors, and monks, destroyed, damaged, or looted at least 640 churches, monasteries, mosques, synagogues, theological institutions, and other places of worship. This according to Viktor Yelensky, head of the State Service of Ukraine for Ethnic Policy and Freedom of Conscience. So what you have here going on in Ukraine is a violation of people's religious freedoms in the Russian-occupied territory. So evangelicals are part of that because, again, they're not part of the Russian Orthodox Church, which has merged kind of with the Russian government to support Russian nationalism and Russian, expansion. And so evangelicals, they're not on board with getting, persecuted or seeing other evangelicals persecuted. And so they have been coming around on the side of aiding Ukraine against the Russians. So here's the thing. Persecution against Christians actually does exist. Now, it's not the BS claims that you hear from right-wingers in America where they cry persecution because they're not allowed to oppress gay and trans people. No, this is real persecution. It just happens to happen in other places in the world. Yes, there are other places in the world where Christians are the minority, and they actually do end up getting oppressed. And look, there are other places where other religions are the minority, and they get oppressed. So understand that, these things do happen in other parts of the world. As far as Christian repression here in this country, no, it's not happening. It's a complete and utter joke. It's, again, not happening, not real. That said, in these places, people are getting killed for their faith. I'm not a religious person. I don't believe in any religion, but guess what I do believe in? Religious freedom. once again, not the BS right-wing Christian version of religious freedom, where you get to walk all over everybody and control everybody's lives, based on your religion. No, I believe in actual freedom, being able to practice whatever religion you want, so long as it doesn't harm other people. And so what the Russian government is doing, I think everybody should be against. Anybody who believes in the actual religious freedom should be against what the Russian government and Orthodox Church are doing to people who are, again, who have different beliefs and different belief systems in these occupied territories. So that said, that's kind of a primer on why evangelicals are backing aid for Ukraine more and more often. They're backing Mike Johnson, why Mike Johnson changed his position, and why everybody's pissed off at Marjorie Taylor Greene for backing the Russians. Look, on Friday, I talked about Marjorie Greene getting a lot of heat from evangelicals. This is why. That's why they're warning her, hey, your evangelical support is going to go away if you continue to fight against aiding Ukraine against the Russian invasion. That's it. Now, another reason, by the way, Johnson passed this bill, his son just entered the Naval Academy. And this is his words. He told reporters, quote, to put it bluntly, I would rather send bullets to Ukraine than American boys. My son is going to begin in the Naval Academy in this fall. This is a live fire exercise for me, as it is for so many American families. This is not a game. This is not a joke. So there is your context, right? There's your context for this entire thing. It might be too much context, but let's get back to Gaetz, right? So Dana Bash noted that the DOJ had decided not to prosecute Gaetz after looking into the allegations that Gonzalez had raised, which allowed the House ethics probe to resume. Gonzalez is the second guy to say that Matt Gaetz might have actually done it. Now, Matt Gaetz, of course, to tie this all into Ukraine funding, Matt Gaetz is against Ukraine funding. So that's how he fits in. Now, Kevin McCarthy, and I've showed you the video before, he thinks that Matt Gaetz got him removed from the speakership, not because of differences in funding the government or funding Ukraine, but because he wouldn't end the ethics investigation into him. And I believe that. And I also believe, and this is ironic, but George Santos and Madison Cawthorn, what is one thing that both of them said about Congress? There are drug-fueled sex parties happening in Congress. Hey, I mean, both of them, look, George Santos, serial liar, all right, lies all the time. On that, I actually believe him. And once again, Madison Cawthorn, same thing. I believe him. I believe him. Because it's Republicans. Republicans are some of the most repressed people on the planet. I swear. Now, Gaetz, according to one written statement, was at a drug-fueled sex party, along with a then underage girl. And he's going to get questioned on that come June. So we're talking about scumbags. Oh yeah, Matt Gaetz, total scumbag. Now, the other guy that was mentioned here by Gonzalez is Bob Good. Now, Bob Good endorsed Gonzalez' GOP primary opponent, Brandon Herrera. Jewish Insider reported earlier this month that Herrera had posted videos that included Nazi imagery, songs, and jokes. So that's why he says, he's a white nationalist or a neo-Nazi. Now, Herrera has also in the past referred to the Civil War as the War of Northern Aggression. So that's kind of where his politics are at. Now, Gonzalez is also attacking Herrera by accusing him of, interestingly enough, not being conservative enough. But what got Gonzalez's goat is that Herrera had challenged him over his vote on gun safety after Uvalde. So here we are having a real let him fight moment. Because on all sides, you have all slightly different varieties of scumbags.